When my stepmother said her real daughter deserved my college fund, I quietly signed the papers. A week later, she found out who the account really belonged to.
And she collapsed.
My name is Emily Parker. I grew up in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. I loved library books, black coffee with too much sugar, and the blue spiral notebook where I wrote my plans. My mom used to say, "Write it like it's real, then go make it real." She said that the night she opened a college fund for me. She put the bank card in a white envelope and wrote my name in her neat cursive. I was 11. She died a year later. After that, every dollar in that fund felt like her hand still holding mine. Now fast forward to the day everything broke and then snapped back into place. We were in a glass-walled conference room at Lakeview Savings, me, my stepmother Linda, her daughter Brianna, my dad Mark, and a lawyer named Mr. Whitman. The table smelled like lemon polish. Linda had a red blazer on, bright as an alarm. She clicked her pen like she was cutting the air into slices. Brianna scrolled on her phone, nails long and pink. I kept my hands in my lap and tried to breathe. "Let's be adults," Linda said. "Brianna is starting at Westwood in the fall. She needs this more. Blood should matter." She didn't mean my blood. She meant hers. Mr. Whitman slid a document across the table. "This is simply a custodial transfer, Emily. You'll still be the beneficiary. Your stepmother will help manage the account until the scholarship disbursements are settled." I read the first paragraph. My mom's name was there. Mine too.
A date.
A clause. The words swam, but I understood enough. This paper wouldn't change who owned the account. Not on paper. Not under the trust my mother built. But it would give Linda a door to walk through, and she loved doors that said private. "Sign, sweetie," Linda said, voice syrup thick. "We're family."
I signed.
Quietly. I wrote each letter slow and neat, the way my mom taught me. Linda folded the papers and smiled like a cat with cream. 1 week later we were back in that same room. The air was colder. Mr. Whitman looked different, more alert, less patient. He had a second folder under his arm. The banker, Ms. Reynolds, slipped in and locked the door behind her. Dad sat stiff and pale. Brianna wasn't scrolling now. Her phone was face down like it was ashamed. Mr. Whitman opened the second folder. "Before we proceed, there's something you should know." Linda leaned forward. "If this is about the withdrawal delay." "It's about ownership," Mr. Whitman said. "After reviewing the original trust documents, the college fund account is not a standard custodial account. It is a remainder trust. Upon any attempt to transfer control outside the terms, the trust reverts to the named owner of record." "And that's me," Linda said quickly. "As guardian."
"No," he said.
He turned the page and pointed. "It reverts to the donor's private foundation, created in her daughter's name. The account belongs to the Emily Grace Foundation. Its board chair is Emily." Silence landed like a heavy book. Linda blinked. "What do you mean belongs to her?" "She signed." "She signed to allow a review," Mr. Whitman said. "That triggered the trust's audit clause. Your attempt to move funds counted as a transfer request. Under the trust rules set by Emily's mother, any transfer outside school payments forces the account to lock, then roll to the foundation for Emily's sole use and decision-making. No one else can touch it. Not even me. Not even your husband. The owner is Emily." Ms. Reynolds pushed a printed statement across the table. The numbers were larger than before. There were also notes: accumulated interest, matching grant, undisbursed scholarship. It wasn't just money now. It was a wall. A bright, safe wall with my name on it. Linda stared at the paper. Her face went white under the makeup. She looked at Dad like he had betrayed her. She looked at me like I had set a trap and grinned. "You little." Her lips trembled. Her breath hitched. She clutched the edge of the table. Then her eyes rolled, and she slid sideways out of the chair, hitting the carpet hard. Brianna screamed. Dad jumped up so fast his chair fell. The banker darted around the table with a glass of water. Mr. Whitman reached for his phone. "Call 911, he said. "Now." As the operator asked questions, as Brianna fanned her mother with a file folder, As Dad said Linda's name again and again, I sat very still. It felt like I was 6 again, hiding in a closet during a thunderstorm, watching the lightning through the slats. But this time the thunder was inside the room, and the lightning had my name on it. The paramedics burst through the door with a stretcher. In the blur of movement, Linda's eyes snapped open. She didn't look at Dad. She didn't look at the ceiling. She looked straight at me. "What did you do?" she whispered, voice dry as paper. The stretcher wheels squeaked. The door swung wide. People in the lobby stared. Somewhere a printer spit out paper, like a ticking clock. I opened my mouth to answer. And that's where I'll leave the moment for now. Because this story started long before Linda fell. It started the first day she moved into our house with a suitcase that smelled like perfume and a smile that never reached her eyes. It started the day my dad said, "Emily, be nice, okay? We all need a fresh start." It started on a rainy Sunday when a necklace went missing and a lie grew legs. I need to tell you those parts to make the ending make sense. Let me go back to the beginning. The day Dad married Linda, the sky looked like wet wool. We stood under a white arch in a park next to the river. The grass squished under my flats. Linda wore a tight cream dress and a thin gold bracelet that clicked when she hugged people. Her daughter, Brianna, stood next to her in a pale pink dress with a slit that broke the church rules. She didn't care. She never did. Dad held my hand before the ceremony. "You okay, Em?" he asked. His eyes were kind. He didn't look like a man who would let anyone hurt his kid. He looked like a man who wanted a second chance. "I'm okay," I said, and I tried to mean it. After they said their vows, Linda hugged me. Her perfume slid up my nose and stayed there. She pressed her cheek to mine and whispered, "We're going to be a real family." Then she pulled back and gave me that plastic smile. I noticed then that her eyes were always watching herself. In windows. In spoons. In your pupils. The first week after they moved in, my mom's quilt disappeared from the back of the couch. The next week, Dad's old mug went missing and the pantry got labeled with perfect little stickers. Pasta, rice, spices, snacks. A week after that, Brianna took over the upstairs bathroom with tubes and bottles and a flat iron that hissed and burned the counter. My blue spiral notebook slid behind my bed in the shuffle. I pulled it out at night and wrote anyway. There were nice moments too. I want to be fair. Linda made roasted chicken that fell off the bone. Brianna taught me how to curl my hair with a straightener without frying my ears. We watched a show together about home renovations. Dad laughed more. He fixed the wobbly step on the porch. He bought a new toaster. For a while, things looked okay. Not perfect. Not like before. But okay. Then the first big crack came. It was the night of my junior award ceremony. I had won the English prize for an essay about my mom. "Words are bricks," I wrote. "They build houses inside your chest." When I came home with a certificate, Linda was sitting at the kitchen island with a stack of envelopes. "What's that?" I asked, still smiling. "House business," she said. "Bills. Returns. You know." My white envelope, the one with my mom's handwriting, was in the stack. My hands went cold. "Where did you get that?" She didn't look up. "Drawer. Needed stamps." "That's my college fund," I said. She picked up the envelope with 2 fingers and frowned. "It's a bank card, Emily. The expiration date is close. We should move the money into something that earns more." She slid it aside like a coaster. "Your dad, and I will take care of it." "Mom set it up," I said. "She said it was for me." She said. Linda's smile got thinner. I'm sure she meant well, but she didn't plan for inflation. Or for a second child in the house. "Brianna isn't," I stopped. The word made my tongue burn. "It's for college." Linda leaned in. "And Brianna is going to college. Westwood. It's expensive. You can both benefit if you let adults make smart choices." Dad came in at that moment with a sack of groceries. He kissed Linda's hair and ruffled mine. "What are we talking about?" "Her college fund," Linda said. "We can optimize it." Dad looked at me. "We'll do what's best for everyone, Em." I wanted to ask him who everyone meant, But he had bags in his hands, and the smell of apples filled the kitchen, and I didn't want to make a scene. I took my certificate upstairs and taped it to my wall and wrote in my blue notebook until my hand hurt. The next weeks were a slow drip of small cuts. Brianna borrowed my hoodie and never returned it. Linda moved my mom's books, just to dust, and then kept them on her nightstand because they look better here. The photo of Mom and me at the science fair slid behind the fridge somehow and got bent. Dad worked later shifts and came home tired. He said he needed us to get along. I nodded and tried. I washed dishes. I folded towels the way Linda liked them, in thirds, not halves. I stayed out of Brianna's way in the mornings. I told myself it would settle. But the night of graduation season, Linda made her real move. We were eating spaghetti, steam fogging the window above the sink. Linda twirled her fork and said too casually, "We need to talk about the college fund." My chest tightened. Okay. It's not fair for one child to have so much while the other has so little, she said. Brianna's father hasn't helped. Your mother is gone. We're a family now. A real family. We share. I stared at the table. The wood had a scratch shaped like a river. Mom wanted me to go to college, I said. And I want both of you too, Linda said, voice going hard and bright. Her real daughter deserves a chance. I'm not letting my child drown because your mother hoarded for you. The word real hit me like a door shutting on my face. Dad set his fork down. His jaw jumped. Linda, he said softly. Don't say it like that. She put her hand on his. I'm saying it like a mother. We can split it. 50-50. Or 60-40. We'll be generous. It's not a birthday cake, I said. My voice shook. It's my mom's plan. It's her promise. Linda's smile fell away. Something sharp stepped forward in her eyes. You will sign the papers, she said. You live in my house. You eat my food. You wear clothes I wash. When I say share, we share. I looked at Dad. Dad. He glanced at Linda, then at me. He looked tired. Maybe we can talk to a lawyer, he said. Just to do it right. Right, Linda said, squeezing his hand. To do it right. I barely slept that night. I held the white envelope under my pillow. My mom's cursive pressed through the paper and into my skin. I thought about running away. I thought about hiding the card. I thought about using everything right then to buy a bus ticket and an apartment with no pictures on the wall. But I could hear my mom's voice like a radio from the past. Write it like it's real, then go make it real. So the next day, when we sat in Mr. Whitman's office and he pushed a stack of papers at me, I lifted the pen and signed. Quietly. Carefully. Every letter neat. Linda looked like a winner. Brianna looked bored. Dad looked relieved. I went home and made grilled cheese for dinner and did the dishes and folded the towels in perfect thirds. I put my blue notebook on my bed and wrote one line. Trust isn't the same as quiet. The week crawled by. On Friday, Mr. Whitman called and asked us to come in again. Linda wore her red blazer. Dad wore his good shoes. Brianna wore her future like a crown. I wore the plain black dress Mom bought me for school concerts. We walked past the potted plant in the lobby and the teller with a bun and the security guard who always said, "Hey there, Miss Parker. You already know what happened in that room. But you don't know what happened that night." After the ambulance took Linda away and Dad rode with her, after Mr. Whitman and Ms. Reynolds had me sign new forms for the foundation that had always been mine, after Brianna hissed, "You're evil," at me with tears tracking her mascara, I walked home alone. The sky was hot and pink and loud with cicadas. The porch light was off. I used my key. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and something under it that had no scent at all, emptiness. On the kitchen island sat a cardboard box. On top of the box lay the bent photo of my mom and me at the science fair. Under it I could see a corner of my blue spiral notebook, a sweater, my toothbrush in a plastic bag. A note was taped to the box in neat, sharp letters. You can leave now. My heart stopped and then slammed back. I looked around like maybe someone would laugh and say it was a joke. No one did. The fridge hummed. A fly buzzed at the window. I touched the note. The paper was thick. The tape was fresh. Then I saw it. My mother's white envelope sticking out of the side of the box, ripped open. Something inside me tore like fabric. I grabbed the box and stumbled to the front door, calling my dad's name even though I knew he wasn't there. The porch step, the one he fixed, held my weight and then, with a sound like a bone cracking, gave way. My foot plunged through splintered wood. The box flew out of my arms. The photo lifted in the hot wind and danced toward the yard. Pain shot up my leg. I tried to pull free. My skin scraped against jagged edges. I bit my lip so hard I tasted iron. The note on the box flapped. The envelope slid farther out, as if my mother's name was trying to crawl back to me. That's when headlights washed over the house. A car door slammed. Footsteps ran up the walk, fast, angry. Brianna's voice cut through the air like a knife. "Get off our porch," she shouted.
Now.
And from the sidewalk, with a streetlight throwing long shadows, a second voice I didn't expect at all said, calm and low, "Step away from the girl.
Right now."
I froze. The pain in my leg roared. The porch step groaned under me. The photo skittered. Somewhere down the block, a dog barked like a siren. I looked up to see who the second voice belonged to. And the world tilted because it was not a neighbor, not a cop, not my dad. It was someone I thought I would never see again, carrying a worn leather folder and a truth big enough to blow our house wide open. The man standing under the streetlight looked almost unreal, like the kind of person memory blurs into myth. His gray suit was wrinkled, his hair was peppered with white, and his brown briefcase hung from one hand. For a second, I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. But then he spoke again, calm, steady, familiar. "Emily," he said, "it's okay. I've got you." My throat went dry. "Mr. Whitman?" I whispered. He nodded and came closer. "I followed you home. I figured something like this might happen." Brianna stepped forward, her phone half raised like a weapon. "You can't be here. This is our property." He ignored her completely, his eyes still on me. "Can you move your leg?" I tried. Pain shot up my ankle. I shook my head. It stuck. Whitman crouched beside me, bracing the step with one hand. "Don't move. You'll make it worse." Brianna crossed her arms. "You people are insane. My mom's in the hospital, and you're here playing hero?" He glanced at her with quiet authority. "Your mother is stable. I called the ER. She's under observation." And for the record, he straightened up, his voice colder now. "This property isn't yours. Not anymore." Her face froze. "What are you talking about?" He looked back at me. "Emily, you need to see something." He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. On the cover was my mother's name, Susan Parker Trust. The sight of her handwriting almost made me forget the pain. "What's that?" I asked. "This," he said, "is the rest of the story your stepmother never bothered to read." Brianna rolled her eyes. "You're all obsessed with a dead woman's money." He turned to her. "It's not about money. It's about legacy. And the house you're standing in," he paused, looking directly at her, "belongs to that legacy." The air around us went still. Even the cicadas seemed to hush. "What?" I whispered. He opened the folder and pointed to a section highlighted in yellow. "Your mother didn't just create a college fund. She created what's called a living contingent trust. The house was part of it. Your stepmother never noticed because your father refinanced under the trust's protection. If certain terms were violated, like financial exploitation of the beneficiary, ownership automatically transfers." "Transfers to who?" I asked.
To you.
Brianna's mouth fell open.
No.
"No way." Whitman's tone stayed calm.
Way.
"And given what happened today, the coercion, the attempted fund manipulation, those clauses activated automatically when Linda filed that transfer. The house, the fund, everything your mother left is now under your control." The world tilted again. My pulse hammered in my ears. "You're saying this house is mine?" "Yes." He gave a small smile. "Your mother was clever. She built a legal safety net for your future." Brianna's phone slipped from her hand and hit the porch with a dull thud. "You can't kick us out," she hissed. "I'm not kicking anyone out," I said quietly. I'm just going home. Her eyes burned with tears, not the soft kind, but the angry kind that sting pride. You ruined everything, she snapped. You think you're better than us just because your mom had money? My voice trembled, but I made myself speak.
No.
I think kindness doesn't mean letting people steal from you. For a long moment, no one moved. The porch light flickered. Then Mr. Whitman gently lifted me free from the broken step and helped me to the car. I glanced back at Brianna, standing in the shadows, her pink nails trembling against her crossed arms. As we drove away, I pressed the white envelope against my chest. It felt warm, like a heartbeat. The hospital smelled like bleach and coffee. Dad sat in the waiting area, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. When he saw me hobbling in with a wrapped ankle and Whitman beside me, his face crumpled with guilt. He said, standing up fast. Honey, are you okay? Brianna called me. She said you fell. I'm fine, I said. Linda?
He sighed.
She fainted from stress. The doctors said her blood pressure spiked. She'll be all right. I nodded, then looked at him carefully. Dad, did you know about Mom's trust? He blinked. What? Did you know she made the house part of it? That if someone tried to touch my college fund, everything would transfer to me? His lips parted, but no words came out. He rubbed the back of his neck. She told me she was adding extra protection for you, but I didn't know the details. I swear I didn't. Whitman handed him the folder. Your late wife planned for this. She loved her daughter. She wasn't just saving money. She was saving stability.
Dad sat down slowly.
Linda's going to lose it when she finds out. She already did, I said softly. He looked at me, his eyes heavy with something between shame and relief. I wanted to believe we could all be a family. I did too, I said. But sometimes people only love what they can control. He leaned back, covering his face with his hands. What happens now? Whitman cleared his throat. Legally, Emily's now the trustee of her mother's estate. She can choose to let you both stay in the house or not. But any future financial decisions are hers. Dad nodded slowly. Understood. I didn't answer. Not yet. We sat there in silence for a while, the kind that hums with everything you can't say. Then a nurse came out. Mrs. Parker is awake now. You can see her, one at a time. Dad hesitated. Do you want to go first? I shook my head.
No.
You should. He stood, squeezed my shoulder, and went inside. Through the glass door, I saw Linda lying on the hospital bed, pale but still somehow proud. When Dad touched her hand, she turned her face away. Whitman leaned close to me. You don't have to make any decisions tonight.
Rest. Process.
Your mother's plan was to give you choice. Use it wisely. I nodded. I will. He left soon after, promising to call in the morning. I sat in the waiting room, staring at the clock on the wall. It was almost midnight. I thought about everything. The envelope, the trust, Linda's words echoing like poison in my head. Her real daughter deserves it. But that wasn't the part that hurt most. The part that hurt most was how easily my dad stayed silent. The nurse walked by and offered me water. I thanked her. The cup trembled in my hands. I kept thinking about the photo, the one that blew away when I fell. My mom's face in that picture, her smile, the way she always looked at me like I was already enough. That's when I made a decision. I was going to take back my mother's house. But not to hurt anyone, to rebuild what she wanted. Safety, peace, kindness. The kind Linda never understood. I just didn't know yet that revenge, when it comes quietly, burns the longest. And in the days that followed, when Linda returned home from the hospital and saw the new letter taped to the fridge, the one signed by the new trustee of the estate, she finally understood what real collapse meant. Because this time, no one could save her from it. And that moment, that's where the next storm began. The morning Linda came home from the hospital, the air in the house felt heavy, like the walls were holding their breath. The curtains were drawn, and sunlight slipped through in thin, sharp lines that made the dust dance. I sat at the kitchen table, both hands wrapped around a mug of coffee gone cold. I heard the front door open. "Careful, honey," my dad said softly. Her heels clicked across the tile floor, slow and deliberate. She looked weaker, but her eyes, those sharp gray eyes, still cut through the room like blades. Her face was pale under perfect foundation, and she clutched her purse like it held her soul. And then she saw me, sitting in her kitchen. Her lips thinned. "Well," she said, "if it isn't the prodigal daughter." "Morning, Linda," I said quietly. She smiled without warmth. "You look comfortable." Dad sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Let's not do this today. The doctor said you need rest." Linda turned to him. "Rest? After what she pulled?" Her voice cracked with venom. "Mark, our entire life, everything, was turned upside down because your daughter decided to play genius lawyer with that sneaky attorney." I stayed still.
Calm.
That made her angrier. "You think this is over?" she hissed. "You embarrassed me. You made me collapse in front of everyone. You think you've won." I met her gaze. "I didn't do anything your own greed didn't start." Her hand slammed against the counter. "Don't you dare talk to me about greed, little girl. You've lived off this house, off me, off my husband for years. You've done nothing but take." Dad's voice rose. "Linda, enough." She whirled on him.
No, Mark.
"You should be furious too. She played you. She played both of us. And now she owns everything because you let that woman," she spat the word woman like it was poison, "run your life even after she died." The room went silent. I could feel my heart beating so hard it hurt. "She's not here to defend herself," I said softly. "But if she were, I think she'd tell you something my dad forgot. Protecting your child isn't manipulation. It's love." Linda took one shaky step closer. "Love doesn't steal from family. Neither does betrayal." Something in her face twitched, anger mixed with the first flicker of fear. She turned to Dad again, desperate now. "You're not really going to let her take everything, are you? The house, the money, everything we built together?" Dad didn't look at her.
His voice was low.
"Linda, this house wasn't ours. It was Susan's. You knew that." Her laugh came out sharp, almost hysterical. "Oh, I knew she left her money to the perfect little daughter. But you," she jabbed a finger toward him, "you promised me stability. You said we'd be a family." He met her eyes finally.
I did.
"But families don't destroy each other to feel secure." She froze. For the first time, her confidence cracked. Her eyes darted between us, me sitting at the table, calm and unmoving, and him standing between us, tired but firm. Something inside her shifted. I saw it. The realization that control was slipping, and there was nothing she could do. Still, she wasn't the kind of woman who surrendered gracefully. "You're making a huge mistake," she whispered, her voice trembling but dangerous. "You'll regret crossing me, both of you." Dad took a step forward. "Linda." But she grabbed her purse and stormed upstairs, slamming the bedroom door hard enough to rattle the picture frames on the wall. I let out a shaky breath. "She's not going to let this go, is she?" "No," Dad said. "She never does." I nodded. "Then I guess I shouldn't either." He looked at me carefully. "Emily, what are you planning?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at the window, where the sunlight was cutting across the table. "I'm planning to do what Mom would have done. Fix what's broken, even if it hurts." He didn't say anything, but I think, deep down, he knew. For the next week, the house was quiet. Too quiet. Linda barely spoke to either of us. She ate alone, slammed doors, and spent hours locked in the study. At night, I could hear the soft clacking of her keyboard and the faint hum of her voice over the phone.
She was plotting something.
I could feel it. I focused on my foundation work, meeting with Mr. Whitman, sorting paperwork, opening a new branch of the scholarship in my mom's name. Every small act felt like reclaiming a piece of her memory. Then one afternoon, I came home from a meeting and noticed something strange. The safe in Dad's office was open. Papers scattered everywhere. The folder with my mother's trust copy gone.
"Dad."
I called out, panic rising. He came running from the backyard, holding a wrench. "What's wrong?" "The safe," I said, pointing. "It's open." He froze. I didn't open that. And right then, a car engine roared to life outside. We ran to the window. Linda's black sedan peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching. Dad's face went pale. "Oh no." "What did she take?" I whispered. "The trust documents. Maybe more." He grabbed his phone. "She can't do anything with them, but she might try." I swallowed hard. "Try what?" He met my eyes. "To ruin you." My phone buzzed. A message. From an unknown number. "Let's see how your precious foundation handles a scandal, sweetheart." My stomach dropped. Dad saw the message. "She wouldn't." But he didn't finish because we both knew she would. The next morning it began. An email from the local paper. A tip had been sent in, a claim that the Emily Grace Foundation was a scam, that I'd stolen funds meant for a grieving widow and her daughter. Fake screenshots. False statements. Even a forged signature that looked almost like mine. I sat at the kitchen table, reading every line while my heart pounded in my chest. Dad read over my shoulder, his hands shaking.
"This is her," he said.
"It has to be." I nodded. "But how do we prove it?" "I'll call Whitman." But before he could, my phone rang again, this time a video call from Brianna. I hesitated, then answered. Her face filled the screen, smug and tear-streaked at the same time. "You think you're untouchable, don't you?" she said. "My mom's been humiliated because of you. Do you even care?" "Brianna, she's the one." "Save it," she snapped. "You took everything from her. Now she's just taking it back." The call ended. For a second, I just sat there. Then, quietly, I opened my laptop and logged into the foundation portal. And there it was. Someone had tried to access the account. 3 failed login attempts. Then 1 successful from an unrecognized device. "Linda." Dad leaned over my shoulder. "Can she move the money?" "No," I said. "Not legally. But she could destroy it publicly." He ran a hand through his hair. "What are you going to do?" I stared at the screen, my reflection pale in the glow. "I'm going to let her dig her own grave. Because my mother once told me, the cruelest revenge is truth revealed slowly when the liar thinks they're winning." And I had just enough evidence to make sure Linda's world collapsed for real this time. What I didn't know then was that by the end of that week, the world would finally see who Linda really was, and someone else, someone I never suspected, would betray me in a way that made her cruelty look almost merciful. That betrayal was coming next. For 3 days after the smear hit, the house felt like a stage where someone else was directing every move. Reporters called the number on our voicemail and left hungry messages. A local blogger wrote a long piece with a headline meant to sting. The foundation's phone lit up with questions. My inbox bloomed with anger and confusion from strangers who thought they knew me. People I'd never met messaged to say how disappointed they were. People I had trusted said nothing. I learned how fast rumor runs when it smells like scandal. Mr. Whitman was a quiet force. He came every morning with a thermos and a stack of papers that smelled faintly of old books. He sat with me at the kitchen table and walked through a list of the real facts: trust language, audit protections, matching grants that were legally earmarked, the bank's obligation to report false claims. He was blunt and kind in the way a good lawyer is. No false hope, but steady plans. "We'll call the bank's fraud department," he said. "We'll get the IP logs. We'll trace the fake screenshots. Social media companies don't like being used for lies." He spoke slowly, so the sound of his voice could steady me. I did what I could. I posted the original trust language on the foundation's page, redacted for safety, but clear enough. I uploaded images of the signed foundation paperwork. I replied to comments with facts, not anger. I handed Mr. Whitman every message, every screenshot, every cruel headline. Still, for every truth we shoved forward, a new whisper slid through the cracks. Someone had phishing access to the foundation portal. Someone had posted a doctored bank transfer image. Someone had called the press with a sob story. Who would do this? Brianna's words had turned from smug to jagged and desperate when she texted me that first night. I didn't answer. The bank cyber team called on day 4. Their voice was thin with boredom and then with alarm as they looked harder.
We traced some logins, the woman said.
One of them used your father's work IP. Another came from a device registered to this house. Her voice softened when I told her about the porch step and Linda's fainting. These things look messy, she said. We'll freeze suspicious activity, but I suggest pressing charges if someone is impersonating you. Press charges. The words felt heavy. Against who? We can't say until we find the device owners, she said. But we'll share a report with the police. A report. A piece of paper that would travel into the hands of people whose job is to see guilt in black and white. A report that could pull you under if you were unlucky. That night I sat in my car in the driveway while the house lights burned inside. I wasn't ready to go in. What would I say? Where would I sleep if people I loved turned away? The radio murmured a late-night show about Neighborhood Watch.
My phone buzzed again.
A text from an unknown number. You should have signed different papers. Dad would have wanted it.
L.
My stomach dropped. Linda. The L that ended with a period like a threat. I could feel the world closing, but I also felt a small, steady heat. My mother's voice, like a small lamp in a dark room. Write it like it's real, then go make it real. I decided then I would show everyone how real our work was. Not by yelling, but by building. I called a woman named Claire, who ran a nonprofit in Columbus. She'd donated once to my mom's memorial event, a shy, practical woman who liked to keep receipts. I told Claire everything. The trust, the smear, the porch step, the missing files. She listened. No pity.
Just businesslike help.
We'll host a public meeting, she said. Bring documentation. Bring witnesses. People like to see facts in a room, not on a screen. I'll book the library hall. We booked the hall. Claire's name lent credibility, like a key. Volunteers from her group offered to help check the portal and save archived emails. Mr. Whitman worked until his fingers frowned into calluses, calling bank officers, speaking to the press with iron patience. Dad, though, retreated into himself. He said he wanted to fix the step, fix the hole, be useful again. But he was quieter, his laughs shorter. Sometimes he sat in his chair and stared at the white envelope that had started all of this, like it was a small animal that might run away. On the day of the meeting, the hall filled with people who had known my mother and people who had never met me. Claire opened with a steady voice about charity law and truth. I read a short statement about the trust and why we founded the Emily Grace Foundation. We showed receipts for previous scholarships awarded in my mom's name. People nodded. Someone from the bank stood at the back with a clerk's face that promised official help. It felt like we had built a small island of truth in a sea of noise. Then my phone buzzed. One new message. No number. No name. We'll be at the house tonight. Make sure you're not there. My hand tightened. I told myself it was a bluff. But when I walked back in the doorway that night, the house smelled wrong, like something had been moved. I checked the study. A drawer I never opened was slightly ajar. Dad's toolbox had been knocked to the floor. A photograph of my mom lay face down on the carpet. I called Dad in the garage. He didn't come. I called his phone. Straight to voicemail. My worry grew teeth, sharp, hungry. I went outside to the backyard, where the old swing hung still. The street looked quiet, but I noticed a car idling around the corner, its headlights off like a sleeping animal. In the shadow of the maple tree stood a figure I recognized from childhood, Mr. Coleman, our neighbor. He waved at me and mouthed, "Call me." Inside, the house hummed. I went upstairs slowly, breath even. The bedroom door was closed. I pressed my hand to the knob and heard muffled sounds, voices low and angry. My hand shook. I pushed the door open. The room had been turned into a courtroom and a battlefield at once. Papers lay scattered like fallen soldiers. The safe, the one Linda had opened before, had been pulled from the wall and lay on the floor, its door smashed. A chair had been knocked over. Dad sat in the center of the chaos, his hands red from something, ink maybe, or blood. Linda stood across from him, her face pale and wild. Brianna was there too, clutching a bundle of papers, mascara streaked down like war paint. "The police are outside," Linda was saying, voice like glass. "They'll take everything." I told them there were irregularities. I told them the account had been emptied. Dad looked up when I entered. For a second, his face was blank, like someone had erased him and drawn a new version that didn't fit. "Emily," he said, "you shouldn't be here." "Why?" I asked. My voice scrambled. "What did you do?" He swallowed. He didn't finish. Before anyone could say another word, there was a loud knock on the front door. Heavy and official. A voice through the wood. "Columbus Police. Mark Parker, we have a warrant." My name shifted on the table. My chair scraped. Dad's face folded in on itself. "What for?" he asked, as if pleading might change the words. Two officers filled the doorway, their badges dull in the lamplight. They moved like machines trained to remove questions. One of them reached into his coat and unrolled a paper with a blue stamp. "Mr. Parker, you're under arrest for suspected embezzlement and filing false bank documents," the officer read. "You have the right to remain silent." The words landed like a hammer blow. Brianna's hands went to her face, and she began to shake with a new kind of sob. Linda fell back as if punched. The room spun. "Dad," I said. This can't be right." He looked at me with a look I had never seen, raw and broken and small. "They showed me bank transfers," he said. "They said, 'We have the logs. We have proof you authorized a transfer.'" I didn't. The officer placed cold metal on his wrists. The sound was dull and final. Handcuffs clicked. The light from the hallway fell across Dad's face and made him look older than he was. "Emily," he whispered as the officers led him past me. "Forgive me." His voice was a small thing under the weight of the click. He met my eyes for a second, such a small, ordinary second, and then they walked him out. The front door opened. The night swallowed the footsteps. I stood there with the photograph of my mother in my hand, the edges soft from being handled so much. The room felt too loud, full of sudden echoes. Linda was on the bed, sobbing. Brianna was on the floor. Mr. Whitman had dropped his briefcase and was on his knees by some papers, eyes scanning frantic lines. Outside, the car with the headlights still off had driven away. I knew, with an awful certainty, that someone had set this wheel in motion. Someone had found a way to make the police see the truth as a lie and my father as the culprit. Someone had every reason to make him look guilty, angry, betrayed, wanting the house and the wallet, and someone had the patience to watch the drama play out. As the officer closed the backseat door and the cruiser pulled away, Brianna looked at me with an expression I could not read. It was not triumph. It wasn't sorrow either. It was something empty and waiting. I pressed my palm to my mouth like that would stop the world from buckling. Then my phone buzzed again. A new text from a different, unknown number. "We warned you. Now you will learn how it feels to lose everything." The words were small, the threat loud. My father vanished into the night with a police report that smelled of paper and finality. The house, a house I had thought I could rebuild like a safe room, suddenly felt like a stage that refused to let me leave. And I understood in my bones that this had become bigger than me or Linda or Brianna. This was now a war between truth and force, and someone else had just raised the stakes. The house was a different place after Dad's arrest. Every ordinary corner became proof that the world had split along a seam. The laundry basket looked like evidence. The kitchen table looked like a witness stand. Neighbors walked past with lowered eyes. People who used to bring casseroles now crossed the street. My phone filled with messages, some supportive, some cold as stone, but the kinds that cut deepest were the ones that said nothing at all. Silence had weight. I woke before dawn and sat at the kitchen table with the photograph of my mom in my hands. Her smile looked smaller in the morning light, but it didn't wobble. I put the picture down and opened my laptop. There were interviews to arrange, a defense fund to set up, and an endless list of paperwork that felt like carrying wet sand. Each task made the day heavier, but each task also gave me something to do besides panic. Mr. Whitman was my anchor. He'd moved into the guest room and came downstairs each morning with black coffee and a paper bag. He paced the legal field like a gardener tending fragile plants. "We'll file an injunction to freeze any suspicious transfers," he said, "and file an emergency motion to have your father released pending investigation, on grounds that he's been set up." He said the word "set up" as if he were savoring the relief in it. It was a long shot. But lawyers live by long shots. They stitch them into suits and walk into court with them, and sometimes, not often, but sometimes, the shot becomes a net. We needed evidence to show who had forged documents, who had accessed accounts, and who had called the press with false stories. The bank had logs, but their cybersecurity team moved like a fortress. We needed someone who could read those logs and follow their threads like a map. That's when I met Jonah Reyes. Jonah ran a small cybersecurity firm out of a converted garage 2 towns over. He'd worked with nonprofits before, tracing bad actors who wanted attention more than cash. He was 30, lanky, and had a nervous laugh that made him seem both young and wise at once. Mr. Whitman had brought his card the day after Dad was taken. "Trust him," Whitman said. "He's tenacious." Jonah arrived with a backpack, earbuds looped over his ears like a crown. He set up a little command center on our kitchen table. "Show me everything," he said. We poured everything into his laptop. Screenshots, texts, timestamps, the bank's emails, the foundation's activity log. He worked with a focus that felt holy. He traced IP addresses, reverse looked up device IDs, and turned raw, ugly data into a trail you could follow with your eyes. For hours he scrolled, muttering to himself, marking lines like a detective with a red pen. "Here," he said at last, tapping the screen. "There's the pattern. 3 logins that looked like they came from the house. But there's also this." He pointed to a string of metadata. "See this jump? That's not a normal connection. It's an internal bank process. Someone inside the bank made a remote session look like it came from your house. That means we're not just dealing with a hacker. We're dealing with an insider." My chest tightened. Who inside the bank? Jonah's jaw set. "I'm pulling device IDs now. It's going to take a bit, but there is a name attached to the session. One employee account is tied to it, Reynolds M., Customer Services Specialist." He looked up at me. "She's the same woman who sat with you in the conference room the day of the trust review, wasn't she?" I remembered her. A tidy bun, a nameplate that gleamed, a professional smile. She'd been polite, a little bland, the kind of face that melts into fluorescent light. "Yes," I said. "She was there." Jonah's fingers flew. "She's got clearance. If she was tricked or bought off, she could have manipulated logs to point at your dad's home IP and then covered her tracks. She could fake a transfer image, feed it to the press, and make your father look like the guilty one." "Why would she do that?" I asked. "Money is one reason. Threat is another. Someone with the right knowledge can make violence look like accident. But motives will follow the money." Jonah shrugged. "People always follow money." We went to the bank the next morning. I had rehearsed my calm voice, but when we walked into the lobby, the place hummed with an ordinary air that felt like betrayal wearing a smile. Ms. Reynolds stood behind the counter, the same tidy bun, the same polite way of tilting her head. She recognized me. Her eyes didn't go soft. They went sharp, like she'd been waiting. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice syrup smooth. I put my lip to the name tag. "We need copies of audit logs," I said. "For the past month. Our lawyer is with us." I tried not to sound like I was asking for permission. I tried to sound like I had a right to truth. She glanced at Mr. Whitman's card and at Jonah's badge. Her smile didn't change. "We can't release those without a subpoena." "We'll arrange one," Whitman said. "In the meantime, could you tell me who had remote access privileges for the accounts?" Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "I'm not at liberty to discuss employee access levels," she said. Jonah leaned forward just enough to show his impatience. "Ms. Reynolds, this is important. We just want to know if there are logs that show who initiated external sessions into these accounts." She gave him a look like he'd asked her to spit into sunlight. "I'm sorry. Security protocol." We left with nothing but the taste of closed doors. But Jonah is not the kind to quit. He found a friendly face in the bank's cybersecurity division, someone who hated cover-ups as much as he did. That night, while we sat at my kitchen table with cold pizza and worry, Jonah's contact texted a number, a small file tagged Reynolds, session, 2025-09, XX log. The log showed a remote session initiated by Ms. Reynolds's terminal at 3:07 a.m., the same hour the forged transfer image was sent to the press. There was digital ink on the white page of our lives. I felt the room tilt. The image of my father being led away replayed like a bad film. I thought of the way he had put his hand on my shoulder and whispered "forgive me" as he was taken. I thought about how raw and human he looked in that moment. The evidence felt like fire in my hands. I had proof that someone inside the bank helped frame him. The next morning the police arrived with new questions. We gave them the log. They asked Ms. Reynolds to come in for an interview. She arrived in a hurry, cheeks flushed, and behaved like someone who had been accused of walking on a tightrope without a net. Ms. Reynolds, the detective said, "We found a remote session from your terminal that accessed the Emily Grace Foundation account. How do you explain it?" She blinked. I don't know what you're talking about. I was at home that night. I go home at 6. I didn't work past 7. Her voice cracked like cheap glass. Jonah slid a printed log across the table. "These are timestamps and device IDs from the bank servers," he said. "They show a session initiated from your terminal. Your badge number is attached." She swallowed. Her hands trembled. I must have been hacked. Someone used my credentials." "Is there any reason someone would want to use your credentials?" the detective asked. She stared at the floor. Then she looked up, and the color bled from her face. I took a loan a few months back, but it was for medical bills." "I didn't." The detective leaned forward. "Who else knows about the loan?" She lifted both hands. "Just me. And my cousin. He helps me with paperwork." Her breathing sped. The story stumbled and wobbed like a house on soft sand. The detective asked to search her bag. She hesitated. Then she nodded. Inside her purse was a flash drive with a label. On it, someone quickly, clumsily, had written 3 letters. L&D. My fingers shook when the officer handed it to Jonah for analysis. Jonah plugged it into a quarantined laptop and watched the screen. The drive contained a partial video file and a folder of screenshots of emails between Ms. Reynolds and an unknown address, and a text message thread that ended with the words, "Payment sent." Quiet now. My heart hammered so loud I could hear it in my throat. Before anyone could process the new evidence, Ms. Reynolds collapsed. Her knees folded as if the floor had turned to glass. The room swarmed with people, hands and murmurs, and the smell of antiseptic. Someone called for an ambulance. She was pale as paper, eyes rolling under lids. They put an oxygen mask on her and wheeled her out on a stretcher to the parking lot, every step heavy and small. I watched as the stretcher doors closed and the ambulance lights blinked blue. In the moment her body left the room, the stolen files and the smear that had nearly buried my father felt suddenly loud and ugly and very close. People murmured about stress, about shock. Some said it was a fainting spell. Some said it was guilt. When the paramedics left, the detective turned back to us with a face that had gone sharper. "We'll need to explore who supplied the payments," he said. "And who instructed Ms. Reynolds. We have a lead pointing to an account where a transfer originated." Jonah's eyes were bright with a mix of triumph and dread.
He looked at me.
"We can pull bank transfers. It's messy, but I think whoever paid Ms. Reynolds used an intermediary account. But there's a breadcrumb, a trace of a digital receipt that goes back to a personal email address, linda.parkerfamily@gmail.com. My mouth dried. I heard nothing but the blood in my ears. For a moment, the room tilted. The name on the screen sat there, blunt and terrible as an accusation. Linda's email. I think everyone in the room heard the same small, mortal crack where something previously thought solid gave way. "Do you want to contact her?"
Jonah asked.
The detective's voice was flat. "Not yet. We need proof."
Proof.
The word tasted like iron. I remembered Dad's face as he walked out the door in handcuffs, the way he had mouthed "forgive me." I remembered Linda's collapse in the bank. I remembered the note on the porch. "You can leave now." I remembered Brianna's text. Let's see how your precious foundation handles a scandal. I remembered Ms. Reynolds's trembling hands. Now a new tile slid into place. On the table in front of me was a thin, bright trail that led not only to the bank clerk, but to an account with Linda's name on it. The puzzle pieces were sharp and dangerous. Someone had paid Ms. Reynolds. Someone had manipulated logs and set my father up. The money trail pointed toward the woman who had shouted the loudest about being wronged. I wanted to run and shout and grab Linda by the collar and force her to tell me everything. Instead, I folded my hands and stayed calm. I had to. Furious, I had to be wise. That was what my mother would have wanted. We need more than a breadcrumb, Mr. Whitman said. We need the record of that transfer, the bank account, and confirmation from an independent auditor. If that account links to Linda, we will have proof of conspiracy. But we must move carefully. I nodded. Then do it. He stood and called the detective's number. Jonah began the next step, tracing payment chains with the same ferocious patience he'd used on IP addresses. Outside, the ambulance drove away into the blue morning. Inside, the house felt like a ship steadying itself after being struck. And when all those gears started to move, when subpoenas were drafted, when search warrants were whispered about, and when the detective said there might be more names on the list, I felt a hollow opening and a brighter light at the same time. Because the story that had started with a signature on a paper had become a chain of moments that led toward truth. But truth tastes like iron in the mouth until it is finally served. Because the next thing that came, the extreme that would throw this whole story into the air again, would be a revelation no one would be ready for. And I was the one who had to tell it. Someone had thought that with the right push, the house would fold, and my name would be mud. Someone had thought that they could move the pieces and dance away before anyone noticed. They had misjudged me. They had misjudged my mother's plan. And they had misjudged how loudly the small and steady voices of truth, a tired lawyer, a young coder, and a daughter who refused to be erased, could speak. But the trail did not stop at Linda's email. It kept going. And at the far end of that trail, like the eye of a storm, I saw a name I did not expect. I closed my eyes for a second, and when I opened them, I knew the next move would not be gentle. Because the next thing that came, the extreme that would throw this whole story into the air again, would be a revelation no one would be ready for. And I was the one who had to tell it. When the next call came from Jonah, I already knew his voice would sound different. Quieter. Heavier. That's how truth always begins, like a whisper you wish you could unhear. Emily, he said, I've got the final trace. I was standing by the kitchen window, watching the morning light spill across the yard. My mother's rose bushes had started to bloom again, delicate and stubborn. Tell me, I said. Jonah exhaled. The payment to Ms. Reynolds didn't come directly from Linda's personal account. It came from a joint account opened 6 months ago, under your father's name, Mark Parker, with Linda listed as secondary access. My chest went tight. That can't be right. Dad would never. I know, Jonah interrupted softly. But the transfer request matches his digital signature. Someone forged it, and whoever did had his private keys. That means one thing. They had physical access to his laptop. The one that was seized by police. I turned from the window. The laptop was in his study. Linda had the keys to the cabinet. She could have. Jonah's tone changed, cautious now.
She did.
But she didn't act alone. What do you mean? He hesitated. The metadata shows 2 different logins on the night the transfer was made. The first from Linda's IP. The second from a guest Wi-Fi account in your neighborhood. My fingers went cold.
Who?
He read from the screen. Device alias. Brianna MacBook. It was as if the air cracked in half. The sound of birds outside faded until there was nothing but my heartbeat. Brianna? I whispered. She accessed the Foundation portal right after Linda did. Same night. Same window of time. I think she was the one who actually sent the forged documents to the press. I leaned against the counter. She betrayed her own mother? No, Jonah said quietly. She thought she was helping her. That evening, Whitman arranged a meeting at the station. Linda had already been called in for questioning about the payment logs. Brianna came with her, eyes swollen from crying but still carrying that defensive tilt of her chin. When the detective laid the printouts on the table, Linda's breath caught. She looked from the papers to Brianna, then to me, her voice trembling with denial. "This is ridiculous," she said. "She's trying to destroy our family." The detective's tone was dry. "Mrs. Parker, the funds were transferred using your husband's account. The request originated from your home network. Ms. Brianna's device was connected at the same time." Brianna's face crumpled. "Mom, Quiet," Linda snapped. But the girl couldn't. Tears streamed down her cheeks as words spilled out like stones tumbling from a bag. "You said Dad needed help," Brianna sobbed. "You said we were fixing it, so the money would be safe. You told me to send the email from my laptop because no one would trace it to you." Linda froze. Every sound in the room vanished. Even the humming light above seemed to pause. The detective slid a recorder closer. "Mrs. Parker, do you want to respond to your daughter's statement?" Linda's eyes darted to me, full of something between hatred and horror. "You don't understand," she whispered. "He was going to leave me. Mark was going to take everything back, after all I gave him. I just wanted a guarantee." "A guarantee?" I said. "You framed him for theft." "I did it for us," she spat, but her voice cracked in the middle. "You wouldn't have survived the real world. You needed someone to bring you down to size." Mr. Whitman stepped forward, his tone like cold steel. "Mrs. Parker, you coerced a bank employee, falsified records, and manipulated public media to frame your husband and discredit his daughter. That's not protection. That's criminal fraud." Linda's shoulders sagged as the detective read her rights. Brianna's sobs echoed down the hallway as officers led her mother away. 2 days later, Dad was released. The charges evaporated under the weight of evidence, but his eyes carried something heavier than anger. Guilt, maybe guilt for not seeing who Linda really was, for letting silence grow where trust should have lived. We sat on the porch that evening, the repaired step creaking softly beneath us. The sunset painted the sky with colors my mother used to love. Dad turned the white envelope over in his hands. "She outsmarted me," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "Mom outsmarted her. She built walls you didn't even know existed." He gave a small, broken laugh. "Your mother always planned 10 steps ahead." I smiled faintly. "So, do I." For a long time, we said nothing. The cicadas sang. The air smelled of rain and redemption. When the first star appeared, Dad handed me the envelope. "It's yours again," he said. I shook my head. It was never gone. Weeks passed. The story made the papers again, this time with the truth. Step-family fraud exposed. Daughter's foundation cleared of all allegations. Donations poured in. The scholarships doubled. The Emily Grace Foundation became more than a trust fund. It became a story about resilience. One afternoon, as I was closing the office, a letter arrived. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. The handwriting was messy, but familiar. "Emily, I don't expect forgiveness. I only hope you'll protect Brianna. She thought she was helping me. She's still just a child compared to what the world will do to her. I failed her. Don't let her disappear. Linda." I folded the paper and stared out the window. The world outside shimmered in summer heat, alive and indifferent. I didn't know if forgiveness was possible, but I knew mercy didn't have to mean forgetting. That night, I visited the prison. Linda looked smaller behind the glass, her hair tied back, eyes tired. She lifted the phone first. "You shouldn't be here." "Maybe not," I said. "But you were right about one thing. Family doesn't disappear, even when it should." Her fingers trembled against the glass. "You sound just like her," she whispered. "Mom." She nodded, eyes glossy. "She always made me feel like a villain even when I was just scared." I leaned forward. "Fear isn't an excuse for cruelty. But I understand it now. You were terrified of being powerless. That's why you tried to steal control. It's sad, Linda, you could have had love instead." Her shoulders shook. For the first time, she didn't answer. When I walked out into the night air, the world felt lighter. The courthouse lights glowed behind me, and in that moment, I realized the story wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about release. Because the real victory wasn't watching her fall. It was walking away without bitterness, carrying only what my mother left me. A name, a legacy, and a heart that could choose peace when everything else screamed for war. Weeks later, at the Foundation's new scholarship ceremony, I stood before a room full of students whose faces glowed with hope. I told them about a woman who planted seeds of love in secret places. About a mother who built protection out of paper and law. About a girl who learned that kindness isn't weakness, it's armor. And when I finished, the crowd clapped softly, like they knew the story behind the story. Outside, the sun was setting over the same house that had once been a battlefield. The roses were blooming again. And for the first time in years, I finally felt home.